A reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 50. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them.
Hey, how y'all? Good morning. It is good to see you this morning. My name's Ed. I'm one of the pastors on staff here, and I'm glad you came to be out today. Now, if I say to you I've been a pastor more than 40 years, I don't know what that means to you or how you think about what my life must have been like for the last 40 years. And in some ways, my life is vastly different than I ever planned it would be, ever thought it would be. And the last 40 years or more have been quite a blessing from the Lord. But in many other ways, my life is probably exactly like yours. I've had some really good times, and I've had some times that I wouldn't wish on the worst person that I know. My life is like yours in that it's a series of ups and downs, and sometimes things go the way that I planned, and sometimes my plan is so stupid it doesn't happen, and it's not the way I hoped for. In fact, it's not the way anybody would hope for. And sometimes I end up like nobody would ever want anybody to end up in just this huge, big mess. And the majority of times, I can look back at my life now and say that the majority of big messes that have happened in my life, almost all the giant messes in my life that have happened in my life, have happened because of, well, dumb decisions I made, wrong choices I made, things that I did that I shouldn't have done. And since we're all in church and y'all showed up at church, I'll just call it what the Bible calls it. It was sin. It's because of my sin. Because of things that I shouldn't have done. I knew I shouldn't have done them, most of them, before I did them, and they were just wrong. But that's not all the trouble in my life. There's also been trouble in my life that's happened because of other people's sins. In fact, y'all may not like this. Some of y'all sinned and I got caught in it. Some of y'all have messed up and my life got tangled up in it. Some of y'all have screwed up, and because I was in a relationship with you and I loved you and I wanted to help in ways I could, some of the consequences you had because of that, they spilled over into me, and some of that became a mess for me. That's true for you too. I mean, some of the heartbreaks and relationships that I no longer have, those didn't come about because of something I did. They came about because of things that other people did. And then there's a whole other set of things that I could talk about in my life that some of you won't enjoy that much, but they come about because, well, there's an enemy. And he doesn't want anything more than just to steal, kill, and destroy every good thing in my life. And some of the things that have happened in my life have happened not because I was dumb and stupid, though that's the majority, or because you were dumb and stupid, though that's a part. Some of it's come about because of the spiritual enemy. And I don't have time to talk about all that today, but what I want to talk to you about is what I have seen in my life. And I bet if you're honest, and maybe you're not where you can see this yet, it's through the good of that, and the times I was dumb and stupid, the times that other people messed up, and the times the enemy meant bad for me, through all of that, God has never left me. God has been with me the whole time. He's always been good. God has always been at work for my good and for His glory through my life. Even in the worst things I've done, even in the times that I didn't acknowledge Him, even in the times I turned my back on them, even in the times that other people did things that I couldn't fix and I couldn't stop the consequence, the one constant in my life is the goodness of God. All my life, He's been faithful. And since I can't possibly know all the stories of the people in this room, I don't know how that hits you. Especially, I don't know how it hits you if you're right now in the midst of something like you just found out you have cancer and nobody can do anything. Or you just found out that relationship you dearly love is so broken and no one can fix it. In fact, maybe what brought you to church this morning is something so messed up and you don't know what to do with it. And you're not sure that God is good or that He's going to work for your good and His glory. Maybe some of the struggles you're facing right now are that. Maybe it's just grief you're wrestling with over things that you've lost and you're trying to figure out your life and where you're at and what's happening right now. Maybe something is going on with kids, or maybe it's something going on, you're going through a divorce, or maybe you just look at the world and you're so anxious about what's happening in the world, you just can't see God in it. And you wonder, how did things get as messed up as they are? How did I wind up where I am? And when you hear me talk about my life and the constant goodness of God, it feels like to you that those are only words that a pastor or a politician can get away with. But I'm telling you, every moment of my life, God has been good to me. And I get when you hear me say that. I just want to hear me say what Sierra's already said. You don't have to fake like everything's good for you. You don't have to fake like you believe what I just said is true. You don't have to pretend like you come in here and when you're down, you have to act like everything's okay. If your life is messy right now and you can't really hardly handle it, what I want you to hear us say is, we want to help you. We will help you carry it. Because a part of the goodness of God to me has been that brothers and sisters in this room have helped me carry it through the years. Because we say to you all the time around here, no matter what's currently going on in your life or what you're thinking about God or what you don't think about God, God can't stop thinking about you, and He is for you at every moment of your life. Which brings me to the series we've been talking about for the last few weeks, where we've been talking about from the beginning, God has been a covenant-making God, that He has said for human beings, I am with you, I am for you, I am for you, for us, for life. I am a covenant-making God, and He's been that way throughout history, beginning with Abraham, and then going down through the people of Israel, and eventually God made a new covenant with all human beings that were willing through His Son, King Jesus. And all of us are invited into that story if we want to. We can be matched into the story of Jesus. Jesus is inviting you into a for us, for you, for us, for life kind of covenant with Him. And God, because of who He is, has worked the same way throughout all of history. God is looking for people. God is at work for the good of the world and for the good of the people around you in the way that He's always been at work. Not in miraculous kind of signs that He does, but He works through people who will join Him in their story. And so for the last few weeks, we've been talking about how at the very base level, this means that God is at work in marriages. And for the last few weeks, we've been talking about how that's true. But today, my job is to get back to the central covenant of this thing, back to the covenant story of God that Nathan began way back in April when he talked to us about the covenant with God and Abraham. So I take you back to that again. God comes to Abraham and He says to him, I choose you. Among all the people on the earth, I want to bless you. Out of all the people that I could choose, I did not choose you because you were something special. I just chose you. One person, I make a relationship with you. I will be for you. And whoever blesses you, I will bless. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing to the whole world. In fact, He says to Abraham, everybody who blesses you, I'll bless, and the people who curse you, I'll curse. But everybody in the world will eventually be blessed through you. God's goal has always been to bless every single person on the earth. But He begins with people. He begins with individual people who will pick up the cause and join in the covenant and will bless as he blesses and provide as he provides for you, as he provides for Abraham. Abraham provides and blesses the world that's around him. And the whole world, God's plan would be drawn to the God who was the original sign of the blessing. I mean, God's blessing to Abraham was meant. You get this, right? God never blesses a person for themselves. God blesses people to overflow to the world that is around us, which is why God chooses a family. Because families in the ancient world were like these little parables that everybody could see. In ancient cultures, there would be one member of the family that would be more blessed by the father than others. It is understood. In ancient cultures, if you were the firstborn, you were going to get more blessing. But not because you were special and not because you were supposed to take the blessing for yourself. Your blessing came with a responsibility. As the oldest sibling, you were to take the extra blessing and you were to bless your mom and the rest of the inheritance in the family. Your extra came so that you could be a blessing to all that are around you, so that your younger siblings and the future generations would bless. Not just because you were highly favored or loved, but because you were given the responsibility to look after the rest of the family. The blessing that you received, it was a parable of the way God talked to Abraham. You are blessed so you could bless. You are blessed to be a blessing to everybody around you. And that's what God intended through Abraham and through his family in the world. They are the firstborn over the whole of the world that God chooses. They're going to receive a larger inheritance of God's blessings so that they could bless the rest of the world, drawing them to the life of God. But I'll point something out interesting to you that you may or may not have noticed when you read the story of the people of Abraham. In Abraham's story, it goes generation to generation. The oldest sibling never gets the blessing. In Abraham's family, the older sibling is not the one that's blessed. In Abraham's family, he's not the one to carry on the covenant. Abraham has two sons. It's the younger one, Isaac, who gets the blessing. Isaac has two sons. It's the younger one that gets to carry it forward. And then Jacob, who is Isaac's younger son, he has 12 sons. And now you wonder, who out of them is going to get all the blessing? What's going to happen to the blessing with all of that? And they all want it. And you're not going to get it. And everybody is not going to get what they're planning. And so we have to wait and see what God will do.
So Abraham's grandson Jacob had 12 sons, but instead of giving the favored attention to the oldest, we're told that he loved the youngest more than all the others. His name was Joseph. And as often happens in families where one child is favored or treated better than the others, it crushes the spirits of the other children. We're told, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph, who was the youngest, was being treated like the oldest. He was receiving special favor for seemingly no reason at all. And it gets worse. Joseph had been given dreams of future greatness. Dreams were a common way God had communicated to Joseph's father, Jacob. And now even God is giving these special dreams to Joseph. So Joseph told his brothers, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." In other words, guys, it looks like I'm going to be in charge. Me, your youngest brother, will be in charge of you. How cool is that? Well, they didn't think it was cool. His brother said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him, all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And so it's not long after that the brothers see Joseph alone in the fields and decide to kill him and throw his body in a cistern to hide it. But the oldest brother, who should have the most reason to despise Joseph, hears their plans and protects Joseph's life. He convinces them not to kill him, but to just throw him in a cistern and leave him there. We're told his plan was to come back and rescue Joseph. But after the brothers threw him in the cistern, they see some Ishmaelite traders coming by, and they decide to sell their brother to these Ishmaelite traders who are heading to Egypt. Now, for people who are reading the book of Genesis all the way through, at this point, your mind starts having some flashbacks to earlier in the story of Abraham's family. Before Abraham and his wife Sarah have any children, they are living in the wilderness where God has led them. And they're beginning to grow impatient that God is actually going to bless them with a child. So they take matters into their own hands. Sarah had a slave she had gotten in Egypt. And Sarah says to Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. I'm tired of waiting for God to build a family for me. I'm going to build it my way. So go sleep with my slave Hagar." And Abraham does. This was commonplace in their world. Men who owned slaves would build their families by forcing their slaves to sleep with them and carry their children. Sadly, in our world, it's still all too common for men to use their power to take advantage of women. And maybe that's been a part of your story. And if so, I'm so sorry. And we want to help in any way we can, because we believe that God is for you, just like he was for Hagar. And when Hagar became pregnant, Sarah became like Joseph's brothers. She thought that Hagar had been elevated to a higher status than her because she could provide a child for Abraham. She was jealous of Hagar and began to abuse her. So Hagar flees to the wilderness to die alone. And this could be the end of Hagar's story. God had made a covenant with Abraham, not her. But God's blessing was not only for Abraham, he was also for Hagar. He sent an angel to take care of her, and he tells her, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." The same kind of promise God had made to Abraham. "I will make you into a great nation." God makes this promise to an Egyptian slave who had been mistreated by Abraham. The angel says, "You are now pregnant and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard your misery. The Lord has heard your cries, and he will bless you. He will give you a son, Ishmael, and his descendants will be a great nation. And though it will be Abraham's second-born, Isaac, who would carry forward the covenant blessing, God did not abandon Hagar and Ishmael. This Egyptian slave that Abraham mistreated would become the mother of a nation, and her descendants would one day become the Ishmaelites who bought Abraham's great-grandson, Joseph, as a slave and carried him back to Egypt. And Joseph will spend the next several years of his life in slavery and then in prison. But again and again, the writer of Genesis will put this reminder in the story. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. Just as he was with Hagar, he was with Joseph. And he is still with all of those who suffer in this life.
I'll echo what Jason just said. When I read accounts like the one Sierra referred to in the Bible, I really wish the story was different. People ask questions about those kinds of things, and I wish Abraham was better. I just wish he was a better man. I wish God had chose to partner with people who didn't harm other people. I wish God had stepped in and he protected Hagar and Joseph from anything bad that would happen to them. I'm confident that somebody was praying. I wish the story was clean. What I wish God chose only good people to work with, and he got back at every bad person there ever was. That's how I'd tell the story. That's the way I wish the world worked. But with most things, it's a really good thing I'm not God. I mean, I'm not in control of the story, and I'm not in control of any of the stories that have been told in the past, because the thing I get when I read these stories and the longer I've lived is these stories reflect not how the world was. These stories reflect how the world is. This is how the world is. And we live in a world where good things happen to really terrible people. And bad things happen to really good people. In a world where my sin gets all wrapped up in your life, and your sin gets wrapped up in mine. But with all of that said, I live in a world where people like me and people like you who've done immense damage to other people and to ourselves, we get a scandalous amount of grace in this world. We get an amazing amount of mercy given to us again and again. And despite our sin, God still partners with me and with you, if you're willing. And no matter how bad life looks, how bad it appears it's going to be for you, God is always at work for your good and for His glory. Life's not neat. Life is exceptionally messy. And the promise of life with God, in case you've gotten it all goofed up or somebody else told you this, the promise is not if you partner with God that He'll tidy up all the mess in your life. God's only promise to you is, I will be with you. I will be with you through it all. That I'm alive, I am active, I am living a life right now in this world. And even when our lives have unimaginable difficulty, when we end up with stories we never thought we'd have, this is still the truth. God is still God, and God is still really good. And that's what Joseph finds out in this story. You know, the Ishmaelites, they sell Joseph to a man in Egypt named Potiphar, and we're like Sierra already told us, all throughout this story, the one repeating theme that you're supposed to get is, but God is with Joseph. When he's sold into slavery, God is with Joseph. He lives in the house of the Egyptian master, and he does well. He does everything he's supposed to do. And the Lord is with him, and the Lord prospers him, and his life gets a little bit better. Eventually, he becomes a master over the whole household of Potiphar. But then his story gets tied into another person's sin. Somebody lies, and he gets tried for a crime he didn't commit, and then he gets thrown into prison. But we're told the Lord is with Joseph in prison. The Lord never leaves him. And he's there in prison, and he finds favor in the eyes of the prison warden, whatever that looks like. And the Lord's with Joseph, and his life gets a little bit better. And he winds up being in a place where he meets a couple of men who used to work for the king of the whole country, a cupbearer and a baker. And they begin to trust Joseph, and then they have dreams. And if you remember in the story that we were told by Sierra, Joseph has the ability to interpret dreams. And when they come and tell him the dreams, Joseph interprets them. He says to the cupbearer, your dream means that you're going to be restored to your place of honor with the king. Remember me when you go back to the king. He says to the baker, unfortunately, it means that you're not, and you're going to be killed. And the baker said to him, is there anybody else that interprets dreams in here? But when the cupbearer is released, he doesn't keep his word. He forgets Joseph. And Joseph again is stuck in prison. And now without a friend. But the Lord is with Joseph, we're told, in prison. And so the king, Pharaoh, has a dream. And he tells it to the cupbearer because, of course, the cupbearer's job was to taste all the food that the king would eat so that if it had been poisoned, the cupbearer would die. Great job. And when he tells him the story, the cupbearer remembers that he got out because he told a dream to a guy he knew in prison. And he remembers Joseph, and the king tells Joseph the dream. And God gives Joseph the interpretation. He says, Pharaoh, the dream means that Egypt's about to have 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And he says, what God wants you to do is take the 7 years of plenty and store it up so that you can bless the world. You remember that God blesses people for what? To bless the world. He says, you'll store up the 7 years, not just so Egypt can survive, but so the world can survive. And Pharaoh's so impressed with Joseph that he takes him out of prison and he puts him in charge of the whole project. And he becomes the second most powerful person in the whole country. He's over the Egyptian master and his wife who lied about him. But don't miss this. This is another little parable. It's just another little story of God blessing one person to become a blessing to the world. Not only is Joseph blessed, but God to be able to interpret dreams and get out of prison, but the wisdom God gives him is to bless all of Egypt, then all the nations around them when the famine comes. And eventually, what happens is Joseph's family, who are back in the other land that he had come from, they're now stuck in famine. And the brothers hear that there's food in Egypt, and so they come. And they have to ask for food from who? From Joseph. And this is a really, really long story. It's too long for me to tell it all to you, but Joseph forgives his brothers. He gives them food. He eventually brings all of them to Egypt to live there. He blesses all of them, the whole family. His dad is there with him. And then there's this beautiful scene that we read. You read the scripture reading earlier. Joseph's father, Jacob, eventually passes away, and it becomes clear to Joseph's brothers, that he's the one now in charge. And they wonder, like you probably would have wondered, maybe he was only nice to us while Dad was alive. Maybe he's been biding his time, and now that Dad is dead, now will be the time when he's ready to take it back for us. And don't forget, way back when Joseph was just a young boy, a teenager, he has this dream. He tells his brothers, I see that one day all of you will come and bow before me. And they do. And Joseph had to think like I would have thought. My life is finally back on track. This is what I thought would happen all along. I get my dream. All of these who've done evil to me, they're now in front of me. But instead, Joseph has learned through all that he's been through the good and the bad, my mistakes and other people's mistakes, and what's happened to me because of the enemy, through everything, God has been with me. And he says to his brothers, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended this for good. I had a dream, but God had a way better dream than I had. God had a way better plan for my life than I could have ever imagined. And what has been done is for the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. You intended to harm me. You intended to kill me. You intended for this whole thing to go off track. And I intended to be ruler over all and have my name be great. But God had a better plan. And the truth is, Joseph had his way through his life where he'd been from a young man. He had a plan, but it never been God's plan. He thought he'd be ruling over his brothers, but when the moment came and they threw themselves at the feet of God, in that moment, Joseph finally realized, I've been a part of God's plan all along. I've been a tool. God's quivered tools the whole time, and this is my moment. Through Joseph and even through Joseph's brothers' evil plans, God had been at work for his good and God's glory all along. One of the most often said things to me in private from men and women who finally, after many years, turn their lives and they begin to follow the Lord, they say to me, I feel like I've wasted my life. I don't feel like, I had so much potential. And I just feel like I wasted it. That's where you are. You need to hear this and hear it clearly. God has been blessing your life for the long run. God is making the most of you. And His plan that He's at work for His glory and your good will not be stopped by your sin or somebody else's sin, because God is telling a story far greater than your story. God is telling a story that ultimately points to our King Jesus. It's bigger than Hagar. It's bigger than Abraham, and it's bigger than Joseph. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's all about Jesus. Because when you look at any story on its own in our own little viewfinder, when you're in the middle of the mess, all you see is tragedy. But when you look at the bigger story, when you stand back and you can see it after many years, you see nothing we ever suffer is wasted. Nothing we've ever been through will God let go unredeemed. I'll just quickly give you the scope of this whole story. Hagar is an Egyptian slave. You won't forget that, right? She's given away by the king to Abraham, who takes her and misuses her. She gives birth to Ishmael, and they're kicked out. And then we're told many years later that it's the descendants of Ishmael who are on their way to Egypt, which is their great-grandmother's home. And they buy a slave who is Abraham's great-grandson, Joseph, and they take him back, and he becomes enslaved in Egypt, just like Hagar had been. And just like God heard the cries of Hagar, a few years later, after Joseph lives his life and Abraham and Joseph dies, we're told that the story is that another Pharaoh arises and he doesn't remember Joseph. And now the Egyptian slaves have become so many that they outnumber the people of Egypt. And he's afraid of the immigrants in his land, so he enslaves the whole people. And then 400 years later, we're told that just like God heard the cries of Hagar, He hears the cries of His people in Egypt. And He remembers that He had a for you, for us, for life kind of covenant with Abraham and his descendants, and He rescues them from slavery. Joseph and his brothers and all of their people. And eventually from that nation of freed slaves, praise God, comes Jesus. And Jesus one night sits and says, "In my blood, I make a new covenant, written in my blood for all of you, for us, for life, so that anyone who will put their trust in Jesus, who will pledge their only allegiance to King Jesus, can have their stories woven into the great, eternal, everlasting story of God." I don't know what your story looks like right now. I don't know if you feel like it's on track or off track. I don't know whether you're suffering under the weight of your own sin or somebody else's sin, or a mixture of all of that, and the evil one is trying to put you through the ringer. But the good news is the Lord is with you. He will not leave you, and He is for you. And that's for your whole life. And through Jesus, all things can be made right and new and eventually be redeemed in God's great story. If you want it, His life is available for you. And so we're going to end by remembering the hero of the story, who isn't you or me. It's King Jesus, who gave His life for us. And we come to remember Him now, and Jason's going to lead us in that.